Hello everyone, welcome to Epilepsy Stories. My name is Robert Fiore, the Connecticut Epilepsy Advocate. Our guest tonight is Peg Tehan, and she's here to speak about epilepsy and epilepsy support groups. Thank you for joining us, Peg.
You're very welcome.
Please tell us about what's happened throughout your life. I know that you went to college a while back. Was that here in Connecticut?
Yes. As far as my life, I have it in 3 different roles, like the first role being up to age 22, brought up like a regular or whatever normal means kid, interested in sports, interested in friends, had a good time at school, went to college at Western Connecticut State, and I believe they call it the university now, and I majored in English. I also liked English even in way back to the 4th grade.
Is that why you're always correcting my grammar?
Correct. Okay. Because
mine's not the best.
No. I mean, I always liked English. I have no idea why. I would spell everything correctly back to 4th grade. And then English in college, simply because I was fascinated by the writings of people, famous people, and analyzing, taking the novel apart, discussing it with other people, the professor. It was just great. So up until age 22, I was like, whatever you want to call it, regular, average human being.
Yeah.
At age 22, it was about 3 months after I graduated from college, I had one particular type of seizure. It happened in a restaurant in Long Island, and I was with 2 of my relatives. The last thing I remember was the waitress coming over and simply saying to me, "What would you like for breakfast?"
That's it.
Next thing I find out is here I am, waking up, feeling so comfortable and relaxed, and letting people know who were passing me by that I had contact lenses on, and I should take them out. Apparently these were just nurses going by, watching my vital signs and simply saying, "Lay down." Okay. Relaxed. So I kept sleeping and sleeping. And then they didn't do too much as far as testing, but by the time I left, they knew I would be tired. And apparently the 2 relatives that were with me said, "We're going to a cottage." Right. Apparently there were 2 nurses in the restaurant who knew right away I was having a seizure, and they said to call 911, and also one of them offered up her key to her cottage saying, "This particular person," meaning me, "is going to be exhausted. Feel free, after you're through at the hospital, go there, let her rest for a few hours." I have to this day no idea who those people were in the restaurant, but
You're grateful.
Thank you. Oh, very grateful. So that's pretty much the very first tonic-clonic, or what they used to call grand mal seizure, that I ever experienced. And from there, I had one another day, maybe 10 days after that, same time, but at my parents' house in the morning, didn't have anything to eat, was talking to a friend on the telephone, and one of the same people, my sister, who had been with me the previous week, knew something was wrong because I apparently verbally came out with something. She apparently came into the room, took the phone, and told my friend, "She's having a seizure. I've got to call 911. Bye-bye." So that first time after 2 seizures, both tonic-clonic, I went into the hospital, underwent testing, maybe 2, 3, 4 days at the most. We're going back in years to like 1974. The only thing I vaguely remember is a spinal cap and also an EEG. The very first EEG that I had came out abnormal.
Really?
But they didn't make a big deal about it. There was nothing to do. And the doctor put me on a specific medication for seizure disorder.
But they didn't declare that you have epilepsy.
No, they didn't declare it, no. Just try this and we'll see you again. What happened within maybe 2.5, 3 weeks was my doctor, who was not a neurologist, I knew nothing of the neurology world at age 22, but he had gone away for the weekend, and I came down with, we didn't know it then, but it was the beginning of a severe reaction to the medication. I would go from, 106 degrees, heat, 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 and then 15 minutes later, I'd be icy, I'd be cold, etc. By the time I went in to see the doctor Monday morning, as soon as he saw me in the office, he simply said, "She's having a severe reaction to the medication. Get her to the hospital." At that point, I didn't care. I was exhausted and simply said, "Don't have anybody visit me." I was just out of it. So I was dehydrated. I did lose, through the next 6, 7 months, an entire layer of skin, and never will take that medication again. So different medications, and then trying to deal with epilepsy, living at home with Irish Catholic parents. We did not talk about things much.
No, definitely don't talk about it.
Especially serious things, medical things, you've just kept it quiet.
Yep.
So what I would do would simply, originally I had planned to go to Ohio, move out there with one of my best friends, and I let her know. I called her a week after and said, "I won't be coming, I'm staying here." So the next 2, 3, 4 years I tried different jobs. They always were working with people, and I would try volunteer work, not realizing even then that I liked working with people.
Right.
Juvenile delinquents, group home people, elderly in their homes. So it was experience besides just working. After 14 years of having the tonic-clonic and also complex partial seizures, where you don't lose all your control totally, but, and I would even know I was having them. Let's say if I were to have one now, I would simply look at you, and if you kept talking, I would shut up and simply go like this, time out. Look at my watch. If I said anything, it would be cuckoo, whatever.
Total gibberish.
Yeah, just would not make any sense. Later on, I might be tired or, have a headache a little bit. But I would go to you and say, "Hey, Bob, remember about such and such a time?" "Yeah, Peg." And they'd smile. And I'd say, "I had a seizure. I thought you were doing something different. Your eyes were kind of out of it, and you couldn't really talk back to me." And I said, "Honestly, that was a seizure." "Oh, okay." By this time, I figured out I was working in the healthcare field, working with different types of people, basically in what they used to call convalescent homes, nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities. And I decided go back to school, see if I could be a student to get my master's. And that would be in social work.
Okay.
This was during the second phase of my life, having begun with the grand mal seizure. And I would also move to different places, even from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast.
Well, see, that you never told me before.
You don't know everything.
And
Right?
And you want to keep it that way.
Some of it, but
Yeah.
just part of my life, still trying to deal with the fact that I had a disorder, not knowing hardly anything about it. Also, I was able to drive because the grand mal were under control. If I had the other type, complex partial, I would know where I was to go, but I wouldn't take that particular exit, knowing just be quiet, concentrate, and get off at the next exit. But every time I moved somewhere, I'd have to find a new doctor. And I'd say I'd had about 7 or 8 different neurologists as I moved to St. Louis, Niantic, back in Milford, etc. And it all depended upon the neurologist, but most of them simply wanted me to, especially at the beginning, decrease one of the medications.
Right.
I guess that's part of their philosophy, practice, whatever, just to see if I could get off it. Those particular times when the medication was decreased within 5 days, I'd have a grand mal seizure. Call the doctor, get back on the medication immediately.
Do you feel that the amount of medication was lowered too quickly? Because the reason I'm asking that is I went through a series of weaning processes, and my neurologist made sure that these were small amounts and it would take a long time. And he made sure that until this almost became a routine for a couple of years of lowering it, he said, we'll do it for, let's say, 25 milligrams and we'll monitor it for 2 months, 3 months.
Nothing like that. Mine was lower it right away for 2 or 3 days, then lower it again.
Oh, they just cut to the chase and that's it.
Very fast.
Yeah.
Very fast. Looking back, I realized that. So with different medications, the tonic-clonic were under control, but the complex partial, I'd say I would average probably 7 a month. I would always write notes in the calendar, what time it happened, what I was doing when it happened, so that I would be able to report it to the neurologist. The more information you give to them, the more knowledge they have to give to you.
Sure, plus back then there was no fabulous websites like Seizure Tracker where you could put everything online and just have it directed right to the doctor in advance.
Very different.
So anyway, with all that monitoring and writing, you probably went to another issue. Is what made you decide to see if there's a surgery out there to have?
Oh, no, I had no. I had no idea they were doing brain surgeries.
Really?
Now we're going back to the, let's see, this is 85, 86, 87. After going out to school in St. Louis, getting a master's degree in social work, returning to the East Coast and living in Milford, I had to find a new neurologist. So what I did was go to Yale, New Haven, and went to the hospital there, met with Susan Spencer. Basically, she said, we're going to do a lot of testing. And I had pretty much the same test done with the exception of the MRI, which stands for magnetic resonance imaging. I didn't know what the heck she was talking about. I said, sure, I'll have it done, and this and that, blood, etc. So during the MRI, as many people know, some people even get claustrophobic in it, I fell asleep. I was so relaxed, tired, whatever. Didn't bother me at all.
After a while, they get used to it.
I think so.
Because before the surgery I had 5 years ago, I had at least 30 MRIs. So it gets to the point where it's routine.
Right. You're right. You get used to it. Apparently, so the next time I went to see Susan Spencer, she simply said to me, we did a lot of tests. She was excited. She said to me, you, Peg, can have brain surgery.
Wow.
I said, what? In so many words, I said, you're not touching my brain. And here I am as a social worker working with traumatically brain injured people and people who are in a comatose state. Whatever the reasons were, accidents, overdose, whatever, I didn't want anybody to touch my brain so that I possibly could end up in that particular situation. I said, just bug off. Yep. She was shocked, but said, oh, okay. And we tried different medications. Some that I were on, years before didn't work. Another new kind didn't work. So I would say about a good year after she approached me about the surgery, I was driving home in Milford, and it was very close to home. I know I went through a red light very slowly, took a turn, and I said to myself as I pulled the car over, okay, God, we're doing it. I was ready for surgery. So in the next year, I went through tests, different types of tests, nothing like they have now, I don't think. They have more intense ones, very, very specific ones. But I did the best I could, took the, what do you call it, WAIS, the intelligence test.
Those are wonderful.
Yes, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I did the best I could, and basically went in for the surgery, and I knew he was going to, this was Dennis Spencer, shave my head off. It's okay, let's just do it. Because I was a second operation that day at Yale New Haven Hospital for the brain surgery, and I had met with the other patient the night before, went over kiddingly to him and said, I know you're going to be in there first at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Hurry up so I can get in. Well, it took much longer than they had anticipated. I'm like, come on, let's go. By the time they got me into the surgery room, I jumped literally from one table to the operating table, dancing because they had music on. I'm like, let's do it. So for the next 6.5, 7 hours, I was awake. They had warned me, and I underwent brain surgery. I'm not going to say how many times I used foul language with the pain, etc., and having had to be on my side the whole time.
Quite a few.
It was not very comfortable. It was painful. I would hear them talking, asking me some questions. And then they also gave me another test, brought the glasses to me. The neuropsychologist came and showing me pictures. And I was to name, the word, give the words of the picture. I couldn't tell you how I did. I didn't really give a hoot at that time. Okay, takes it away and says, okay, she's ready. So they got me under, and maybe 2 hours later I was awake and stayed at Yale. At that particular time, we're going back to 1988. They kept me in for 10 days. So, quote unquote, the surgery was a success. It was. I have not had a seizure of either type since the night before the surgery. So it was successful.
That's great.
Excellent.
That is really great.
That was fabulous. However,
yes, we do have a however. Go ahead.
the third stage of my life is up to the present time, because I had surgery. It was a success. But they apparently had to go deeper into the brain, the left temporal lobe. Then they had to go deeper than they thought, and I would take tests again every 3 months, neuropsych tests again, see what's going on, and even a decrease in some medication. Well, it didn't work that well with me. I became depressed. I did not want to eat. I didn't care about people, lost weight, etc. Went back to Dr. Susan Spencer. She just looked at me and said, I'm going to increase one of your medications to the level it had been and come back next month. If you're not any better, you are going on an antidepressant. I was relieved to know it wasn't me. I wasn't making it up. It's happening chemically. Chemically, my brain needed what had been taken away.
Right.
That was a very serious experience, because anyone who knows anything about depression, it's anything but fun.
Oh, by no means.
You have very little feelings. That was a very tough time.
But you did pull through, though.
I did. I'm still on antidepressant and 2 medications for epilepsy, but at low levels. So that was definitely a success.
But there's another success we'd like to speak about, too. And that's, you are a leader of a support group for people with epilepsy.
That's true.
What brought you to say you wanted to be part of a support group or start a support group, other than the obvious?
Well, it goes back to graduate school.
Okay.
I worked in St. Louis, and what I did for my last practicum had to do with the epilepsy agency out in St. Louis. Never did I even know an agency existed for people with seizure disorder, epilepsy, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So for a good 6 months I was there. I got to learn more in 2 days, reading all of their books, any pamphlets, everything about epilepsy than I had known for the past decade at least, having experience with the seizure disorder. What I did also, part of the practicum, I would go to one of the hospitals out there. I believe it was Barnes Hospital. Check up on some people who had epilepsy. Also ran or began a support group at the agency for people with epilepsy.
Oh.
And I never forget the first client. He came in and I could kind of overhear through the hallway what he was talking about, explaining his seizure to one of the workers, but also claiming to the lady, "You're not going to understand, lady, you don't have seizures," okay? So immediately I get a call on the phone, "Peg, I'd like you to see such and such." Sure. Went out, he came in, and again he starts talking about his seizures, about how he can't find a job, he can't keep it, and I pretty much asked him specific questions like, what happens? How do you feel? When does it usually happen?